You define womanhood?
You sound like Matt Walsh.
It's a good question.
Womanhood, to me, is about standing in integrity. It is about being confident in who you are. And me, as a Black trans woman, should not be a threat to you. And what I see from a lot of cisgender women is they're trying to deem what womanhood is supposed to look like. I have my own perspective of womanhood. We can coexist in the same world, but the reality is we get so stuck on parts. Having a vagina is not the only thing that makes you a woman. I'm sorry. It takes integrity, it takes courage, it takes lifting other women up. It takes those things to begin to defy womanhood, and there's so many other different things.
Women's greatest strength, I do think that only biological women are capable of going through that process and bringing life into the world.
I need to push back on that because we're also forgetting that trans men and trans masculine people can also give birth as well. And I don't think it's fair to just set it on one group that says that just biological women have that power to just give birth. And we have to be very clear when we look at the nuances of birth.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. What an interesting conversation I stumbled upon as we have conservative women versus trans women. Okay, this is a conversation that took place on Djibouti, and I'm going to just play some portions of this conversation and react to it because I think conversations like this are proof that there really is no point in having conversations with some of these people because they're just not grounded in reality, okay? And when somebody's not grounded in reality, there is no point in really trying to talk to them because they're never going to understand what you're saying. In order to have a productive conversation with someone, you have to operate in the same reality. When you're not operating in the same reality, the conversation can't be productive. That is something that I've come to an understanding on very recently in regards to this whole issue about, you know, LGBTQ rights, specifically when it comes to transgender individuals. Again, if two people are not operating in the same reality, the conversation is pointless. It really is. So let's go ahead and get into this.
I don't feel comfortable going to any bathroom in this world, like in the current society we live in, and to make trans women the whipping girls of that, I think that's disingenuous, but I do think that we need a systemic change to make ourselves safer. I don't really know anyone who doesn't feel a little bit uncomfortable going to the bathroom.
And trans people are not a delusion. Let's make it very clear. We're here. We've been here for ages. We've been here since the beginning of time. We're in your history books. And I think it's very disingenuous to say that a whole identity is a delusion.
I believe that you feel like women. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an objective truth, and I don't believe in his truth, her truth, their truth, my truth. Like, there is truth, and
Who defined that truth?
And like it's already defined, and as a Christian, I believe God is the one who set truth.
But who defined that?
Is the truth?
Can you tell me who defined that?
God.
Who created chromosomes?
Yeah, I'm personally not religious, and I believe in science.
When we talk about chromosomes, it goes back to the conversation we were talking about earlier about being intersex.
But we're not talking about intersex. We're talking about people who were born as a male and they try to transition. The whole fact that they're trying to transition into a female in the first place shows that they aren't actually that, or else there would be no need to transition, right? So
yeah, so it's funny because they always bring up this thing when you bring up biology, specifically chromosomes, where they always say, well, intersex. And it's like, you're talking about like what, 0.00% of births, okay? Like, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, those intersex people, obviously there are issues there, but they were born with those issues. Right? That does not apply to a majority of society where you can clearly define whether or not somebody is a male or a female based off their chromosomes and their genitals. It's very simple. It's very simple. This is true for 99.99% of people that are born.
Well, you say, okay, I feel like a woman. What is that? What does that feel like?
Yeah, how does it
And how do you know?
I'm not saying I feel like a woman. I am a woman.
So then why did you transition? Why can't you just present as a man but be a woman?
I transitioned so I could be who I was. I did not feel like I was the person that I identified with when I was born.
So you're just admitting, you literally just admitted that you're not a woman, like you weren't born a woman. You had to transition to become a woman. But again, a lot of that transitioning has to do with artificial drugs that if you were not taking those drugs, if you did not put those drugs in your body, then you wouldn't be undergoing these changes, which suggests that you at your core, your DNA, your biology, that you're simply not a woman. I'm just saying, I mean, they're basically admitting that.
So I took the steps to align my outside body with how I feel on the inside. What makes you stand up every day and make you identify as a woman? Let me challenge you on that.
I am a woman, and I don't like being called a cis woman because I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman. I'm not a birthing person. I'm a mother.
So get mad at the terminology, not at trans people.
It's your new terminology.
Yeah, but it's your terminology, right? Oh, don't get mad at us. Get mad at the terminology. It's like, okay, well, you made it up. You're the only people that use it. Nobody else uses this except you guys.
This is what I notice a lot of cis women do. The terminology has been around for so long. Cis is a prefix.
I never heard of this. I've never heard of cis until like, what, 2 years ago? Right? 2 years ago, that's why I heard of cis. I don't even know what it stands for.
This means same. Instead of getting mad at trans and non-binary people for using updated terminology, get mad at Webster. You're not going along with the times and being educated on the different pronouns and the different identities.
You have to admit some.
Yeah, all 100 of them. Right, that's a whole lot of education. You got to take a whole course for that. Okay, in fact, they have those in college. Right, that's what they're indoctrinating people with.
The pronouns are kind of ridiculous. I mean, to be, with all due respect, I mean, I'm sure you have to agree some of the pronouns
I don't think
use.
They're ridiculous. I think they're very expansive. Trans and non-binary people just want you to respect their chosen pronoun. We are not trying to force pronouns on you.
Yes, you are. Right? We want you to respect it. And we're going to say it's hate speech if you don't respect it. If you don't call me by my preferred pronoun, we want you locked up in jail. I'm saying that because I just did a story about that. Yeah, that is what some of these people want. That is what it's going to lead to, right? Their ideal reality is that if you don't abide by my rules, okay, if you don't adhere to my reality, which is not reality, but if you don't adhere to it, you should be locked up, right? You should be locked up. You should go to prison. You shouldn't have freedom. You should be shamed. You're hateful. You're a bigot. You're transphobe. You're homophobe. That's what it is. That's literally what it is.
Just understand that the terminology is going to continue to grow. If you're willing to educate yourself and understand, then you've got it.
No, bruh. I don't think I have time. I literally don't have time to go through the 100+ genders and sexualities there are, bruh. Like, there's so many. Nobody has time for this. Okay, you're making things so much more complicated than it has to be.
Womanhood, to me, is about standing in integrity. It is about being confident in who you are. And me, as a Black trans woman, should not be a threat to you. And what I see from a lot of cisgender women is they're trying to deem what womanhood is supposed to look like. I have my own perspective of womanhood. We can coexist in the same world, but the reality is we get so stuck on parts. Having a vagina is not the only thing that makes you a woman. I'm sorry. It takes integrity, it takes courage, it takes lifting other women up. It takes those things to begin to defy womanhood, and there's so many other different things.
Yeah, so I guess I can define myself as a woman based off those things, right? If I got courage, if I got integrity, if I'm lifting other women up, I guess by that definition, because, you know, you don't need a vagina, okay, to be a part of that, right? I guess I can define myself as a woman, right? Not that I want to, but I'm just saying that's a very loose definition. I'm just saying I'm not sure if that definition is strict enough.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so if I were a white person and I said Blackness is about integrity and courage and kind of the same thing that you used to define womanhood, and then I said I want to transition into a Black person and I'm white. And I'm redefining what Blackness is to fit what I view it as, right? There's no objective reality of what Blackness is. Would you consider that appropriation, or do you think that's something I should be allowed to do?
I consider that dodging, and I consider that comparing apples to oranges, because race and gender identity are two separate different things.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. It could be apples and oranges, but it's not in the way that this person thinks. In the sense that being transracial is a lot more reasonable and grounded in biology than being transgender. Okay, because male and female are binary. Okay, you're either male or you're female, unless you have a very special situation. Okay, where you're intersex, again, which affects like almost nobody. Okay, but however, when it comes to race, race is actually fluid. Okay, there are very few people living on the planet that are of a pure race. Okay, there's, especially in America, right? Everybody has a little bit of something in them. Okay, so race actually is a fluid thing. Sex is not, right? So it would make more sense for you to be able to be transracial than you would be able to be transsexual, transgender, because again, race is a lot more fluid. The difference between a black man and a white man is a lot less than the difference between even a black man and a black woman. You see what I'm saying? Black men and white men have much more in common, are closer to being the same than a black man and a black woman. This person is, I think they're off here.
Because when we look at race, we have to look at many, many different structures of what whiteness and white supremacy looks like, and how white supremacy can be manipulated into other things. And what happens is the closer you are in proximity to whiteness, you're able to weaponize it against other people. It reminds me a lot of Rachel Dolezal, who, you know, masqueraded as a black woman. It really did open up many more doors of conversations around it, but it's still wrong. It's still not fair, because she will still ultimately have a privilege that I, as a black trans woman, would not begin to have.
What's interesting is that we're talking about race and gender, or as we probably like to call it on our side, sex. Race actually has a more understandable structure for people being transracial. Race does actually exist on a spectrum. I'm biracial. Many perceive me to be black, even though I am also half white and half black. We label people like President Obama as a black president, even though he is as well. Race has never had binary markers. It does exist on a spectrum. Gender, however, does have binary markers. As much as we try, as much as we change the way that we self-present, chromosomes are not going to change, and that's just a reality.
All right, I'm going to bring up a little point here, because you talked about the binary side of gender. Mm-hmm. Well, I was born a little of both. I believe I've never had my chromosomes checked, but since I fathered 2 children, I'm assuming I have the correct male chromosomes. So I was intersexed, and there's a lot of reasons that happens, none of which are well studied or understood, but a friend of mine in the pediatric trauma world says about 1 in 150 kids come out with some degree of ambiguity in their gender. For me, that appeared as always feeling out of place. And for the first week of my life, I was in the surgical wards at Naval Hospital in San Diego, getting pieces of me cut off. So, and then they gave me testosterone for the first 11 years of my life. I wish the world were truly sexually binary. It would make it so much easier. But there is a little bit of a smear. And, you know, as a trans person, I'm a very conservative trans person. I don't see the huge gender spectrum that a lot of people in the trans community do. Do I feel better having transitioned? Yes, absolutely. I used to live in a little shell, well, very large shell, but, now I'm, much more open about who I am. Is that the only thing that generally defines a woman? No, I don't think that is the only thing that generally defines a woman.
Now, I disagree with this person, but I do understand if they're truly intersex, like, I can kind of get it, okay? In the sense that it's like, all right, like, I don't know though, but I take that back, because they said that they fathered 2 children, which I'm assuming this person had a penis. Maybe they had, some abnormalities going on down there. Okay, so I'm assuming that they have the correct chromosomes, and they did, at least at one point, have a penis. I mean, if that's the case, then, I mean, yes, you were born with some abnormalities, but for the most part, you're male. Okay, for the most part. And again, there may be a little bit of a spectrum there when you're talking about birth defects. But again, we're talking about birth defects. Those are different than people who are born 100% normal, okay? When you don't have an actual birth defect. And we're going to get to this last part here. We're going to play this.
I use myself as an example. This is about how big I was in junior high school and early high school. I used to be able to walk up to a V8 engine block, pick it up off the floor, and set it on a table. And if I was in powerlifting or weightlifting, that amount of, that advantage was just unbelievable. I've been on hormones for 15 years. Did it weaken me? Absolutely. Did my bone density really hasn't changed, my muscular hasn't changed. And this is not a binary question. There's a lot of nuances involved.
I just want to ask a question. For what you were saying, can you throw out some statistics?
I don't think you need to have there's an abundance of research. There's even trans activists who agree with exactly what I'm saying. And your hormones can change, right? And even she just spoke to the fact that her bone density did not change in going on hormones and changing these things. And we can see it in sports as we're watching them. Leah Thomas is a great example.
So if you can't throw out the statistics, we're not doing enough of the work. And let's also be clear, there are some cisgender women who produce high levels of testosterone as well. And so we really have to unpack it from all different sides here.
Can you produce statistics about the bone density of biological men and how it changes upon being on hormones and whether or not it levels out to biological women?
I actually cannot, because when I would think of those statistics,
So you're not doing enough of the work.
I would think it was BS, to be quite honest with you, because the reality of it is we could talk about statistics and the research all day long, but it's about experience. We're going to be looking more at the experience because, again, when we look at cisgender women who produce high levels of testosterone and who have been kicked out of sports and been disqualified from teams based on something that they biologically cannot control.
So here's the thing. She basically just asked Amala for statistics, okay, to back up her argument. But then when she was asked, and then she said, well, if you can't give us statistics, then you're not doing enough of the work, right? You're not doing enough homework. You came in here unprepared. And then when she got asked for statistics, she basically says, I don't have any statistics either. But even if I had statistics to disprove my argument, right, to prove that I was wrong, I'm not going to believe it because it doesn't fit my worldview. It doesn't fit my reality. And this is why I told you guys, it is pointless having the conversation with these people, right? It really is. It literally is a waste of time. It's a waste of air because they're living in their own world, man. Like, that's just what it is. And you can't change it, right? You can't change it. I mean, she literally just told you, even if I saw facts and statistics that did not meet my worldview, okay, that proved I was wrong, I just wouldn't believe it, right? So this person is just stuck in their ways. There's nothing that can compel them to change their mind, which again would make this a waste of time.
Then what are we really talking about here?
Well, we're talking about, data and that is overwhelming. And we're talking about what is also we're capable of seeing with our human eyes. I think it's very clear that if you compare maybe you to the rest of us, there is going to be a strength difference. There's going to be a bone density difference.
But you're just saying that you don't know until
we do know that. We do know that. We do know that, generally speaking, men and women are different biologically when it comes to things like athleticism, bone structure, muscle mass, hand size, all things that matter when it comes to competing in athletics, which, that's what they're talking about. Biological men competing against biological women in sports. We know there's a difference. This is why sports is separated. Because there's a difference. If you put a girl on a basketball team, man basketball team, she's not gonna get any playing time. She's gonna get dominated. If she gets out on a football field, her life is in danger because she doesn't have the same amount of athleticism, muscle mass, bone density. She simply does not have the same physical attributes as a man. It's really that simple. It's very clear. But again, like I told you guys, these people, some people, they're not living in reality. And when you're not living in reality, it's like talking to a brick wall because they're going to see whatever they want to see and they're not going to see what they don't want to see.
Physically do something and just perceiving and assuming just because I look a certain way, that's not fair. Me and her we could look completely different or whatever, but she may be stronger than me.
I agree, but
she have much more agility and vitality than I do.
Yeah, but we're talking about on average, right? On average. We're not talking about a individual situation. We're talking about on average. On average. Is the average man or the average woman stronger? Is the average man or the average woman who has more bone density? Average man, average woman, who has bigger hands? Yeah, all these things matter.
We don't know that until you actually do it.
I'm saying it has been studied. It's been done.
And it's been done. We've seen it numerous
but it's
times,
an assumption.
time and again.
But we're only going on assumption at this point. Because again,
it's not assumption when we see when we see it. Maybe it's the news cycle that I watch, but I see it a lot. I see it quite often where they're showing trans women beating. I mean, I'm by far.
And you don't see women dominating in the men's sports, right? You don't see trans men going into men's sport and just completely dominating and wiping the field with them. This is what happens when you, in my opinion, twist God's design. And when you go against God's design, you create these problems that you wouldn't have if you weren't going against what God intended.
I'm going to take her side a little bit on that. And let me say one more thing, and I'm supporting you on this one. There's a great deal of women that, and actually there was a lady in the last Olympics that they actually disqualified until she went on androgen blockers to knock her testosterone down to a female level. Like I said, this is not a binary yes or no question. And the whole idea of messing with what, God puts up, God put me up, okay, if you want to take that. And I had this conversation with a very religious man in San Diego, and he was like, oh, I don't quite know how to deal with that.
And God made you that way, but he didn't make a lot of the people transitioning.
I understand.
No, but God also understands.
Yeah, so here's the thing, man. They take these most extreme examples they can find and say, look, this is proof that sex is not binary, right? And it's like this example they're talking about, I think some athlete, some African woman or girl that had, very high testosterone levels. It was so high that it was like, this might be a dude. But it's like, this person has a vagina and they have female chromosomes. If that's the case, then it's a woman. I actually think that woman should have been allowed to compete without having to take androgen blockers. But I'm just saying, that's still a woman. Yes, you're going to have genetic abnormalities, just like you're going to have men who have higher levels of estrogen than normal, but that doesn't make them a woman, right? They still have a penis and they still have male chromosomes. Just these small abnormalities that we see, when people are born or between sexes like that, that doesn't prove the whole point. We're talking about 99% of the population and normal people. Okay, what's normal? That's what we're talking about here. Most of these transgender people, again, 99% of them were born perfectly fine, perfectly normal.
Understands my transition. God, first of all, knew what I was going to be in my life. God already knew I was going to be trans when God put me here. So I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair when people did.
Yeah, that makes no sense. God has a strange way of going about things. He's inefficient. That's what he's doing. If he's like, look, I knew that you were going to be trans woman, and we're going to make you go through all these surgeries. We're going to make you go through, the things that it takes to transition from a man to a woman. That's kind of messed up, right? I would be extremely mad at God if I was this person and I believed the things that she claims she believes. I'd be extremely upset, right? I'm like, yo, you're an asshole, okay? Because you should have just made me a woman. If you knew I was going to be a trans woman, then you should have just made me a woman. I'm just saying what this person here is saying, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure if this is the way that God works.
Dib and dab. Your relationship with God is personal.
Yes.
It's sacred.
Let's
and
keep
I
it
don't
there.
think it's fair when other people dib and dab in other people's relationship with God when they don't understand what they go through. God still blesses me as a trans woman. God blesses you as a cisgendered woman. God is embodied in me as a trans person. I don't think it's fair, again, when we judge people's personal relationship with God. Gender identity, sexual orientation, none of that matters to a God that loves all.
We'll leave it at that. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.